Elaine's our sixth artist of the night. And she is an aerial landscape watercolor artist. She's exhibited internationally and has achieved signature status in both the American Watercolor Society and the National Watercolor Society. She also teaches watercolor classes. I am fascinated with watercolors, not because I'm a watercolor painter, but it's a process that I've never really done before outside of
Mhm.
outside of high school. I gotten into all these different processes, and so having a friend, his name's Eric Wood. He uses watercolor. He's awesome. I don't know if you know who he is, but I'm starting to get more and more into it. So if you can just tell me about your current body of work.
Yeah, I actually, when I moved to Sacramento, I started, when I would fly in and out of the Sacramento airport, I noticed how wonderful the landscape was here from the air, all the agriculture, the river, the beautiful, beautiful rice fields. And so I kept thinking, gosh, I've got to figure out how can I paint this landscape from an aerial view. I've got to figure this out of how I can get resources and try doing that. And I was painting a variety of things. So I got brave one day and walked into this little tiny airport near Clarksburg, and I don't even know if it's still there anymore. And I walked into the guys in the little hangar, and I said, I'm an artist, and this is my idea. I need to get up and in the air with somebody to take me up and help me get some photos I could paint from. And I wanted to do some aerial landscapes. And so they're like, yeah, sure. When do you want to go? And I was
Wow.
like, oh, okay. Like, in a few days or next week. They're like, yeah, okay, just meet us here. And he took me up he just took me up. I've learned that pilots love to fly and they have to log their hours. They
That
love to
makes
take.
sense, right?
And so it's like, okay, I'll go up with you. And he was more than happy to take me up. But little did I know at the time, although it was fun and I wasn't too scared, is it was an old Piper Cub World War II plane, and it had been restored from the 1940s. And that meant that we took off from a dirt field and we landed in a dirt field. And so that was interesting. And what I also didn't know at the time was that they typically keep the windows and the doors open on these little planes as they're flying. So that was a little strange, although that was perfect for me to take photos. I was able to hang out the door and window and take photos. And I, of course, was strapped in. But so that was kind of like, whoa, I didn't realize I was going to be able to do that. And then on top of it, the other thing about this particular plane was it's a tandem setup to where the passenger sits in front of the pilot and the pilot sits behind you. So the other really bizarre thing with that first plane trip was it felt like no one was flying the plane. And I was the one sitting there with this plane somehow flying. The joystick was moving. I had the instruments. I could see everything. I could hang out the window. And it was just an amazing experience. And I could see why pilots get addicted to flying. It's just incredible up there. And that particular plane could go very low and very slow, like 75 miles an hour at a very low height. So he literally took me down the Sacramento River, almost like it was a road. We kind of just flew down this river. And so I got some amazing shots, and he showed me some wonderful things that you can only know and see from the air. And it was amazing. So I got some great shots from one of my first flights. And so ever since then, I've been, contacting different pilots who pretty much are just like, yeah, when do you want to go? I've only hired pilots a few times. One was recently when for this particular painting and show, I needed some photos as resource photos for the North Valley. And behind me, that's the Sutter Buttes. And so I needed to hire a pilot that was up there rather than fly from Sacramento. So I had to find someone, and luckily I had another interesting flight. Every flight's been interesting. I ended up flying with this pilot who had a Sea Ray plane, which means it can land on water. I didn't need to land on water, but this particular plane could do that, and it was set up very differently. The propeller was in back of the middle of the wings, not in front. And so That was a very interesting experience. Again, he kept the windows open. They had these glass canopies that slid back. And so we went up and took pictures of the buttes and, you know, everything that I was needing to do. And towards the end of the flight, he says, well, this is a seaplane and it does land on water. So, you know, you might as well know what that's like. So I'm like, okay. So we
Yeah.
went to the Black Buttes Lake, which is now, there's a big fire over near there. And we went to the Black Buttes Lake, you know, just outside of Orland. And we landed on the lake. And then we landed, and then he's like, okay, well, you know what that's like now. So, and then off we went. So it was pretty amazing. I have probably thousands of photos from the plane rides I've taken. I've also rode in an old 1940s World War II training plane, which was what they trained pilots in for the Piper Cub. And that was set up differently. It was tandem, but the pilot was in front. So that was nice. But I've learned so many things about our area from the pilots who fly, and I've seen some incredible things that you don't even know are there. Like the one pilot took me over this area down south of Sacramento, and he said, make sure you look down as we fly over. So I'm looking down, and sure enough, here's this pool in the shape of a pear, and the stem of the pear was like the steps into the pool. And apparently he was a pear farmer. He had pear orchards. And so it was just, you know, he showed me this bridge to nowhere that I didn't know we had. There's some area down there that near Ileton, I guess, that the levees are breached and have been breached a long time. And so there's a bridge literally goes to nowhere because the water flooded over it. So there's all these incredible things that I've seen and found and learned about, and these amazing stories from the pilots that I never knew anything about. So it's been a fun process to learn about the area and then be able to paint it. And hopefully I'm capturing the feeling of what it's like to fly over our area. We have such a beautiful area with, you know, the river and rice fields, and it's just amazing. So
It's crazy from these stories you're telling me. It's like it's kind of unique because you're getting like all these different experiences, and that's not even talking about the painting.
yeah,
That's to get to the painting, but you're having
right,
it's almost
right,
like they definitely go hand in hand.
right. And the process of doing that is as much fun as the painting. You know, it's just, I really could see why pilots fly. It's just amazing up there. It's so quiet, and it's just another world. It's so beautiful from up there, especially depending what time of year you go. Like when the rice fields are growing, it's like this beautiful lime green velvet. Like you could reach out and touch it. It's just amazing.
And you're right. It's like the only way you can see that is if you go up there and you're
Yeah,
kind of like our interpreter
yeah,
of, you know, what they're seeing, what you're seeing.
right.
So what has been your favorite project or commission from the last couple of years?
There's been a lot of favorites. I guess the one that stands out at the moment was I had a family who owned some property down near Walnut Grove, and it was family property they had in the family for a while. They had pear orchards and tomato orchards or fields and a variety of other crops they would switch around. And they were wanting me to do a commission, and I sometimes hesitate on commissions because I've got so many other things going that it's hard to fit them in. And you know, you're never sure if the person's going to like it. There's just a lot of other pieces of doing commissions, but they are fun to do. So I finally agreed to do this commission. So I had to go up to get shots of their property because they wanted the painting to be of their family property they've had all this time, which was down by the river in Walnut Grove area. And they wanted to be sure to try to get the house and the orchard and all these different parts of the property. So I had to go in a special flight, and that was in the trainer plane that was for the World War II plane of, it's called an Aranca Champ. And I went up with a pilot whose whole family are pilots. They had purchased the plane for their grandfather who used to train pilots in World War II. Of course, he's not living anymore. And he had taught the whole family how to fly. And so we were in this plane, and we had to fly over this property quite a few times. And they were hoping that I could get Mount Diablo in the background as well, which sometimes is hard because it's always hazy. And so we're trying to get all these shots. We're going up and down different levels and around. But the thing that was really a little sketchy was, if you're familiar with the Walnut Grove area, there's those 5 radio towers down there that stand up off of Highway 5. And this property had 1 or 2 of those radio towers on it. So here we were in this little plane flying around these radio towers that have these giant wires coming down from them, holding them to the ground. And we're flying in and out of them, trying to get the right shots of this property and Mount Diablo and the river and all these different things we're trying to get the shots of. And so there's a few precarious moments in there. My mind, if I let it go too far, my mind would be going to the wrong place of like, oh my gosh, we're gonna, not make it through this flight. But I had to I only had a few moments of that, and I had to just say, okay, it's fine. This is really, really cool. And it's the pilot's job to fly and get us back safely because he wants to get back safe too.
That's something you definitely have to tell yourself when you're up there.
And it's my job to get the right photos so that I can do the commission. So we flew around several times, these radio towers, and trying to get all these right shots. And he was willing to do it. But it was, once I kind of would push that out of my mind several times, it was really cool because to see those radio towers from the top, they're huge. They are huge. There's one that has like a little platform on top that's got to be giant, but from the ground, it doesn't look that big.
You can't really grasp it until you see it like that.
Yeah, it was. I have some shots of that, and I've been thinking about maybe painting it. I don't know if it's something people would purchase, but yeah. So that I think was a memorable one, and it ended up that people really loved it. It was right. We just happened to be flying over during the tomato harvest, and they had the tomato trucks there. So I was actually able to get the tomato trucks in the painting, and they were really teeny tiny trucks. And it was a very large painting. It was one of the largest paintings I've done in watercolor, which is hard. And so I was able to get the little tomato trucks in there with the shadows. It was later in the day. And the tomatoes, interestingly, when they're being harvested, the ones that are still in the field are pretty orangey red. So the fields are very orangey red from the air. But then the ones where they've already harvested, where the trucks were, take on kind of a mauve color, burgundy mauve color, because they have squished tomatoes in with the brown of the dirt. So I think that was fun for me to kind of see and introduce another color I don't normally have in my landscapes.
You're actually so far away from the stuff that these colors are like optically blending together.
Right.
Awesome.
Right. So, and I was able to get the river in and a little bit of Walnut Grove and the locks. They actually have the locks that are down there. I got those little tiny ones in there. I didn't get Mount Diablo in there. It just was too hazy and wasn't working that day. So we had to kind of, give that up. But I did get another painting that people liked because people kept asking about Mount Diablo. So I do now have several paintings of the Buttes, which is here, which is a recent one. And I do have a couple now with Mount Diablo. And the Buttes are always fuzzy too. You can see in this painting, it's really hazy. So that was difficult to get that haziness in the watercolors, to get the washes right. So it was really hazy. And some people may not realize, but the white of the paper is the white in watercolor, and you kind of work backwards from light to dark. And for me, it's even especially harder with my paintings to do any of this kind of stuff because I save the deckled edge, which is that little ruffled edge around the watercolor. That's the natural edge of the paper from when they make it.
Oh, wow.
And most watercolors stretch their paper, which means they tape it down, and then you lose the deckled edge because you have to cut it out from the tape. So I don't do that, which really adds a lot of challenges to painting big washes and skies and such because it's warping and the edges get this little edge called a blossom where they kind of gets a backwash and moves the color in the paint because it's on the edge. There's a lot of challenges that come up with doing that way, but I love the deckled edge. It's this lacy, nice edge, and then I float when I frame it, it's float mounted so you can see it, and it's just, I think it just, help show off the painting.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've actually never seen a watercolor painting like that.
Mm.
So we're down to the last minute.
Yeah.
I mean, this was awesome, by the way. Like, and I'm sure you have way more stories,
Yeah.
and they're so interesting. I feel like I'd fall out of a plane. But where can we find out more about your artwork and where you might be able to buy it?
Well, my website is ElaineBowersArt.com. I'm also on Instagram as Watercolor Waltz. I also missed somehow, I didn't get into the artist event, but I'll be doing a artist event for ages 4 and up, all ages up to adults, for September 24th at 2 p.m. And I'll be showing people how to do a little watercolor butterfly, learning some basic techniques.
Awesome.
Just very, very basic, but you could do it with your children, grandchildren, whatever. So anyway,
Thank you, Elaine.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, bye.